You've sent your screenplay off to Hollywood. Now what happens to it? A lot more than you think. Our guest RONA Edwards explains on this episode of Rolling Tape.
This episode brought to you by Spoof Dance Film Festival. Make parody commercials and bring the funny.
Welcome to the show, RONA.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some, what I think is vital information with your viewers and listeners. Just to give a little rundown in case people don't know who I am, I'm an active film and television producer. I've produced 11 films so far, mostly in television and documentary, but I've had zillions and zillions of projects in development in studios and independent production companies for feature and TV and new media as well. So as in addition, I'm also the author of these two great books. I have to say, I wish I had them when I was starting out. The Complete Filmmaker's Guide to Film Festivals, and our latest book is the third edition of I Liked It, Didn't Love It, Screenplay Development from the Inside Out. This is the quintessential book on development, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today, the development process in Hollywood, in both television and feature film, and even the wild, wild web, as I like to call it. You can get these books, by the way, as an aside, anywhere really, but on Amazon. They're certainly available on Amazon. They're certainly available on the publisher's website for MWP for this book. This book is available at bookstores and Amazon only. So the development process is an interesting thing. I wrote this book with Monica Scribellis. She was a former studio exec, and I was a former production company exec, and we used to do business together. We ended up teaching a class together at UCLA, and that class became the basis for I Liked It, Didn't Love It, Screenplay Development from the Inside Out. We realized we didn't have this kind of book when we were starting out. It's a book that basically covers the complete development process, who all the players are, how they fit together, how to find and develop new ideas, how to pitch, what this new paradigm of the golden age of television is about, and how can you be a part of it? What kind of opportunities can you find in all these platforms? One of the things that I think is probably the most misunderstood is the development process. Screenwriters submit their material, they think it's going to get made just as is, but there's a lot of hands that touch that script or book or short story or pitch or treatment. What usually happens is the writer works hard at his computer or her computer and comes up with a great script, and now what does that person do with it? Well, they have about three choices. They can go directly to a studio if they have that connection, but I have to say most studios will not accept unsolicited material, and it's really best to come through an agent, a manager, or a production company. So I would put that one aside, and I would look at getting yourself an agent or manager first. And there's a big difference between agents and managers. A manager is not regulated by the state of California or other state laws in other states. Basically, they manage your whole career. Technically, they're not supposed to procure employment for you. But the difference is a manager can be a producer on your project, and that's how they can get your material out and hopefully get it made for you. An agent is highly regulated, not only by state regulations, but also by the Writers Guild of America. The Writers Guild of America is very strict in what they allow agents to charge and what they allow agents to do. Agents cannot produce material. Agents get a flat rate, as of now, 10% off what you make. If you have an agent that says, pay me something up front before I take your material out or represent you as a writer, that is a fraud. That is a scam. Do not go for it. Do not fall for it. We all get very seduced by people who promise us and dangle that brass ring or carrot in front of us. But that is absolutely false. An agent and a manager only make money when you make money. Remember that. So an agent is regulated by the state. They can't charge more than 10%. They can't produce, but they can procure you employment. So a lot of times you can get a manager and an agent. Years ago, we used to say you didn't need both, but with agents having such a long list of clients, it's really important that you get the right team together. Yes, you'll be paying more off what you make, but the key is that you haven't made it yet. So I always say 0 of 0 is 0. So putting the right team together, I think, is essential. So you have your agent or manager. You could also submit your material directly to a production company if they allow unsolicited material. And those companies that may allow unsolicited material will certainly have you sign what is called a writer's release form, as will agents and managers, by the way. And what that writer's release form does for them and for you is protect both of you. Definitely protects the production company, agent, or manager, because they may have something very similar in development, and they don't want you to come back at them later on and say, well, you read my material, you stole it. To be honest, there's only been a few occasions where, in all my vast career, 25 years in the business, where I've ever seen anything that looked remotely like maybe it could have been stolen. But one has to really understand that there's only really 7 basic plot lines, as some would say, and it's how you execute it that makes the difference. So there's going to be a lot of Cupid stories. There's going to be a lot of science fiction stories of days ending and apocalypses and zombies that may seem similar. They're not necessarily stolen, however. That being the case, a writer's release form protects them, but it also protects you and gives you a paper trail as well to the person that you've submitted to. So they'll probably send you a writer's release form, you'll submit it, and you'll hopefully have it read. From then, the agent or manager, if you go that route, and also the production company route, will probably want to option the material or work out some sort of deal with you that they can take it in to studios or other financiers, because there's so much independent film now, and studios really don't develop as much as they used to. And from that, they will take it out to what we call those territories and see if they can get the money or the check written or put into development at a studio. Once it gets submitted to a studio, it immediately goes to the story department. And the story department is the hub of the motion picture group at a studio. They record with coverage every piece of material, from scripts to pitches to treatments to novels to articles to short stories, whatever it may be, gaming, in this vast database. And they will then, the head of the story department will actually assign a reader to it, which is called a story analyst. And the story analyst will read it and write coverage. They read 1.5 scripts a day, usually, 1 to 1.5. And they write a couple of pages of a complete synopsis of your screenplay. And then they write about a page of well-organized comments of what they think works, what they think needs work, and if it's something that they could recommend to the studio. They'll also recommend not just the material for the studio, but they'll also look at the writing. So you might get a pass on your material, but you also might get a consider as a writer. And that gets flagged for all the executives at the studio so that they will look at material that they are working on and developing and see maybe you're right to do a rewrite on it. If all goes well and it gets good coverage, then it's going to be assigned to the weekend read. And this is the motion picture group gets together on Monday mornings after having a weekend read. There used to be a time in the days when they didn't have PDFs and emails where studio execs would get piles and piles of scripts on Friday night that had to be read by Monday morning. So they read the scripts, they decide whether they like it or not, and then at the Monday morning meeting, they all talk about your material. And they say whether it's, something worth, putting into development and why. The studio exec will definitely make if they really like the material and the coverage is good on it, they're going to try and make a plea to the president of production, who ultimately has the final say of whether they really pass on the material or it gets put into development. That's basically the rundown of what happens to material when it's submitted to the studio. And I've done it very fast. The book is much more in depth as to what each person does, and from there on out, how they all fit together. I would say that it's important to realize how many hands touch your material when you submit it to a production company or a network, and even a smaller production company, because there could be a producer, a development exec, an assistant, and they might all read the material and write coverage and discuss it. So don't think that your material is arbitrarily submitted and lost into some vast hole, which it could be, but most of the time this is the system that works time and time again for almost 100 years in Hollywood.
Okay,
so,
give us the name of the book one more time.
Oh yeah, sure. This is the book that really talks, this is the 3rd edition. It's something that Monica and I are quite proud of. because it also talks about television and the golden age of television and the new pioneers and frontiers. So it's feature film, it's TV, it's the wild, wild web, it's everything you need to know about the development process and how that will benefit you as you try to submit material to Hollywood and production companies in general.
Okay, Rona, man, great information, and that was just awesome. Like, I'm like, holy mackerel! I think you send a script in, and well, a lot of people think I'm going to send a script in, they're going to love it, they're going to make a movie, and that's not the case. And
it's a long process, and I think the other thing I would say, a tip for everybody and all your viewers is simply that I don't think you should look at people giving notes on your script, whether it's a production company, a producer, a studio development executive, or whatever, or network executive. They're there to make the script better. They know how to get the green light, and those are the people who are writing the checks. And you have to remember that. So a film business is a business, and it's a collaborative effort. If you don't want that kind of collaboration, be a playwright, because the Dramatists Guild is quite clear that no one can change a word in your play without your permission, but not so in the movie and TV business.
Rona, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and hi to everyone out there. I wish you much success in your creative endeavors.